Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful Tuesday evening, or it could be Wednesday, depending on wherever in the world you're joining us from today. Thank you, as always, from the bottom of my heart for making My EdTech Life what it is today. I appreciate all the love that you share for our podcast, all the likes, the shares, the follows. Please make sure that you all continue to subscribe and share our wonderful episodes. And I'm just so excited today to speak about something that I am a huge fan of, which is obviously immersive technology. And I'm really excited to welcome to our show today Tom DuBois, who is joining us from Remio VR. And we're going to be talking about that great platform. And we're going to be talking about the education implications for AR, VR as we continue to move the education landscape forward. So thank you all for joining us. And please make sure if you guys have any questions, let us know where you're joining us from and go ahead and share your questions or comments. So thank you so much. But I'm happy to introduce you today to Tom, who is joining us. Tom, how are you this evening?
Great. Hi, Fonz. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you. I know that this was something a long time coming. Maybe we kind of scheduled this show about last month or so. So I've been really excited. And as you know, we know that tech continues to move forward. We've seen so many great things. CES was this last week. So a lot of great stuff going on in immersive tech. So for our audience members, Tom, who are getting to know you today or just hearing about Remio today for the very first time, if you can give us a brief introduction, about your work and maybe a little bit of work history, because that is something that I was like, wow, I can't believe the experience that you have. So Tom, give us a little introduction about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Remio, and I've really worked in product management for most of my career. And what that really means is thinking about the features we're going to add to the product, engaging with customers to really understand their needs. And in VR, I've been working closely also with the headset manufacturers like Meta and Pico. Um, Remio VR is a startup. Prior to Remio, I worked in the video game industry for a number of years. So I worked with Electronic Arts, and I worked on Madden and FIFA and a lot of EA's big video game titles. And then as VR was kind of becoming a thing, I got really interested in it. I worked on eye tracking, and actually, I'm sorry, I in between EA and VR, I went to a company called Z Space, which has a three-dimensional monitor. They call it, I think, holographic monitor, where you can put on almost like 3D glasses in a movie theater, and you can see objects sticking out of your monitor. And the reason I mention them is they are actually focused on the education space, and it was kind of almost like they're still around. They're selling into schools, but it's somewhere kind of in between a 2D monitor and putting a VR headset on your head. And then, as I said, I was working on eye tracking, and I was at a startup that got acquired by Google, and I worked on a bunch of Google VR headsets and applications. And then from there, I actually worked with the NFL on a volumetric video project, which was pretty cool. It was a 3D point cloud that we would capture live sports, and now I'm having a great time at Remio, which it's a combination of collaboration tools and games. And what we really see is, I'm sure we'll get into it deeper, but if you just have a meeting application in VR, it can be very dry. And so we think if you give people fun things to do in a social setting, you can really have a lot of bonding, whether it's in education or in business.
Excellent. Wow. Well, before we get into Remio, and I just want to kind of dissect a little bit more about your experience, because I mean, you're coming in from, the video game background, and then, working into, you're finding out AR, VR is kind of, becoming something that is out there now and very popular. So what exactly, at what point, maybe during the, coming up of VR, AR, VR, was it that you said, wow, this is that something that's going to be big, and kind of transitioning into that? Was there something specific, or maybe something that you saw that piqued your interest and said, hey, maybe I want to move into this space, and start kind of working
Yeah.
there?
I mean, really going way back, I think what's always interested me about kind of the consumer gaming space is it tends to use new technologies, cutting edge technologies, whether, it's 3D graphics or artificial intelligence. I mean, games have really been on the forefront, and I really involve working with new innovative technologies. So, VR has been coming for a long time. We've gone through a couple of cycles, but this whole idea of immersive computing and really moving beyond kind of these flat 2D monitors that we've had for a long time, and keyboards as kind of the way we interact with computers. I just think VR is going to be a key step along the path of getting more immersive with how we interact with computers.
Oh, absolutely. And I am all here for that, my friend. I'm also very familiar with Z Space that you were mentioning, and, seeing their laptops, seeing their devices, something that's great for just adding that additional learning experience. So we'll get into that in just a second too, as well, as far as the experiences, because the way that we talked about Remio right now, you describing is just having that combination of those meeting rooms, but bonding and having games and so on. It's something that I think is very important, because when we got locked into pandemic, and myself speaking from the education standpoint, and having meetings after meetings and trainings and so on, it just would get just something sometimes a little bit boring sometimes. So we definitely want to build a better experience to fully immerse ourselves in, and take that learning also to another level and make it fun. So I'm curious to note here, as far as now your transition into Remio, if you can tell us a little bit about Remio VR's platform, and also maybe telling us a little bit of the schools that you work with, and a little bit of the key features of the platform.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so Remio, just to paint a picture maybe for people, is we kind of think of it as a metaverse as a service. So we provide a customizable virtual environment, and we have kind of a main hub you can land in, which you can customize. We have like a Greek island. We have a snowy winter wonderland. We have some more like corporate kind of settings. And it's kind of the main hub where when you log in, you create your avatar, and you have this physical virtual space. And then we tie a lot of different experiences to that space through the metaphor of a door. So the door is kind of a portal. You can gather large groups in the main landing area, and we have whiteboards, and you can stream things from your PC, like a video or a slide presentation. But then you can walk through a door, and you can be, playing paintball or doing an escape room. For our business customers, we have a bar that's not necessarily used in the educational space, but it's basically this extensible system that can be highly customized. And so we've been working with some educational partners, and it's really been a pretty wide range. We have some kind of late elementary, middle school focused partners, definitely high school, and then going into college. And one of those is the Hoquiam School District in Oregon, where they started a VR program last summer, really more high school age. It's ostensibly about programming and developing in VR, but the teacher is fairly innovative and is really concerned with just getting kids engaged generally, and also just kind of a lot of kind of emotional development and social learning. And one of the things he's been most excited about is seeing kids form friendships in VR that would never happen in real life. Kids from different social circles. He has a really wide range. Some of them are disabled, or have other challenges, and it sounds like a cliche, but hanging out with an athlete or people that are in kind of these different social groups, and kids have said things like, "Hey, I would probably never be friends with you in real life, but we're like bonding online through our avatars."
That is awesome. That is great. And there's so much there that I want to unpack, especially with this experience that you're sharing from this particular teacher. But before we get into that, I know you started working with a couple of elementaries, high school, universities, and so on. So my question to you is just because I'm a big proponent of this, and I wish that we can definitely be accessible for us here in our district. But in your experience, not only through Remio, but your experience in AR/VR, what would you say are some of the biggest barriers or obstacles to be able to engage within the K-12 space?
I mean, definitely, it's access to the hardware, right? So, I
Mhm.
mean, there's an investment in infrastructure there to um, have these headsets, manage the devices, and the software. Um, we tend to work through resellers, who that's a lot of what they do is manage that piece of it. Um, but I think once you can get over that hurdle, it's finding a school district or a teacher who's a real champion about kind of wanting to provide this kind of education.
Yeah, and see, and that's what I see. I agree with you. We've had a lot of guests here, and usually that's what it'll take. It'll just take that one or two champs that can bring it in and show the capability of what the tech can do, and embrace that, and kind of be that model for everybody else. So yeah, it's interesting. And again, it's one thing that I always like to ask, because I know maybe for a school district like one in our size, who's relatively small, 14 schools, sometimes it really just turns out to be more of the cost rather than the return on investment. And going back to return on investment, like you mentioned, that one particular teacher who has different types of students in their class, but being able to make those connections, I find that something that's very valuable in this space. So can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences and being able to see that? And of course, maybe a little bit more of, is this the goal for Remio, where this is the space that you want to get into more, or is it just a mix right now of what you're offering?
Yeah, well, so I think if you look at maybe where VR has been in education in the short history of that, I think there was a lot of hey, we could use this for virtual field trips, maybe 360 videos and go places. And I think very early on, even with things like Google Cardboard, that was kind of one of the use cases. Um, and then you do have very kind of bespoke applications like Z-Space, right, where they have a physics application. It's a simulation. It does a very specific thing. And if you're not taking a physics class, then you're not using that piece of software. Um, Remio is very much about, again, having this customized, extensible platform and being very general. So, like, we are not building specific simulations for biology or chemistry or physics. And, why we want to be able to play different kinds of media. And so you could play 360 movies. We want to be, much more than that. And so we do see this social piece as our huge differentiator. And a lot of the current apps are limited to can be limited to pretty small numbers of people, uh, like 8, 10. One thing Remio is really focused on is scale. So we typically have 30 or 40 people in the same environment, but we can go up to several hundred. And then once you go beyond that, we can have like multiple auditoriums where one speaker could be broadcast to multiple places at the same time. So you can scale up to 1,000 participants. But for something like a classroom where you might be 20 to 30 people, I think being able to be in the same environment, and actually have tools to manage that. Um, and so again, we started off doing kind of events in VR. So we have a lot of hosting tools. So if kids aren't paying attention, you can like mute everybody. You can pull everybody together. Um, we have like various objects and things people can play with. We can turn those on and off. So a teacher is able to kind of manage the group in a way that can be difficult if you try to use an off-the-shelf VR application.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I'm curious though, like as far as your platform, some of the tools that you do have available, you did mention the video, which is great, to be able to immerse yourself in a space and you're still able to project or show video from your computers. But, you did mention whiteboards. Are there any other kind of tools that are available, as we, go into Remio's platform and experience it?
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of the core tool set, again, we do have like whiteboards, different kinds of meeting rooms. We have, again, the ability to stream content in from a computer. So we have some people that are doing things like streaming in a TED talk, and then they have a discussion in VR. And then again, we have a 3D object customizer where you can import objects and place them in the environment. Um, and then we also have galleries, so you can import images and things, and kind of you can imagine creating your own little museum or whatever, and then you kind of walk through it.
Yeah, actually, right now, if you saw my expression, like my face lit up because, the ability to be able to do something like this in this immersive space where for myself, what I love about AR, VR is just the possibilities, getting outside, even though you may be in a physical world, working through this, but just the ability to feel like you're immersed in a new world and you're connecting with other people that you might not connect with in real life. And to me, that's huge, that importance, that experience, seeing things from different lenses, but also to be able to experiment with these tools that you have available, to be able to hear somebody speak. You're doing a conference, the gallery walk, this idea, of being able to post your work and walk through and have discussions and things of that sort. To me, it's just so valuable that sometimes we don't get that time obviously in our classrooms because time is something that is so valuable. And of course, you've got to go through the curriculum and you've got to do all those things. But something like this is for me is a game changer to be able to give students that experience or to travel or be able, like you said, that I liked is be able to import 3D objects. And now the student is creating and they can create their own space. They can create their own little area of this this platform that people can come and visit and see and interact with. And I think that that to me is what I love about this space, the ability to do those things. So that's great.
We have
Absolutely
a
loving it.
we have a new partner in the education space who hasn't launched yet, but they're aiming at slightly younger kids, like early middle school. And it's exactly that idea of instead of a book report, or maybe kids are doing, a slide presentation, PowerPoint presentation. Now they can do that in VR, and it's exactly what you just talked about. I'm
Yeah.
doing a report on an octopus. Let me import a 3D object. Let me create a gallery, and then that is their presentation. They walk the class through their project, basically.
I absolutely love that. But a couple of years ago, and I can't believe I'm saying that years because it has been years, I think, when I interviewed Dr. Messina Morris from Morehouse College. And that one was one of the things that I absolutely love. And I want to, kind of repeat what she said here because, again, for teachers, the possibilities that are here are great because, at least in my experience, now teachers are pretty much they're self-contained for the most part in our district, which means they teach all subjects at the elementary level. But there are some schools where I was at before where we kind of were departmentalized, where I just did math and science, and then or did math and social studies, and then the other teachers would do something else. So it almost seemed like we were siloed. and we were all working in our own little worlds. But what I loved about what Dr. Morris said that she was able to do at Morehouse was that she was able to kind of bring down those walls and show that now you can have the fine arts teacher or English teacher, language arts teacher be able to come in into a science class and be able to tie in and marry some of their curriculum with the science curriculum or math and science and social studies and so on, and you're just removing those silos and those barriers. And that's something that I can see that potential with a platform like this to be able to have that where you no longer see everything separate. It's more of like, hey, we can bring in everything together. And that, to me, I'm getting really excited about that just speaking about it, because this is something that I would love to experience and have others be able to experience too as well.
Yeah, there's integrating all the subjects like you're talking about. There's even something that's even, I think, more primal about VR. And again, this idea of, instead of a kid presenting and kids sitting in their seats listening to somebody lecture, uh, this idea of kind of like walking and talking, where it still is a presentation, but you're walking around in VR and experiencing the presentation. And for some kids, and when you walk maybe to the next part of the gallery, maybe there's an object that you can pick up in VR. If you're a fidgety kid, you can be playing, but you're retaining a lot more. And the other aspect of VR is, again, just the presence. You can't turn off the camera like you can on video conferencing, and you really have to be present. People see your body language, they see your head, your eyes. We're getting the newer headsets are having eye tracking and face tracking, so you see expressions. That's where I think people really haven't thought about what immersive computing is going to mean. It's so much better than Zoom for remote distance learning.
Absolutely. So, I mean, one thing that you described there too that I love that you said, it was that, you have something for in that environment for all of your students. And I recall having in my classroom, having, one particular student who was very fidgety and so on, but really, still being able to engage him and, give him his space in his area where he was still engaged. And in the immersive space too, you absolutely have that. And that's the one thing that I love, that they're always active. There's that level of engagement, and there's still that level of control, that learning that is taking place, and you're doing it together in that space where everybody has a voice also, and it's not always just like, well, the fastest one that raises their hand is the one that gets to answer, but everybody has the ability to create and be able to take ownership of their learning. And I love what Amanda says here, voice, agency, choice, immersive environment, so much like game-based learning spaces. Absolutely, this is one thing that I absolutely love. So now, are in your experience, again, just because of what I read and so on, but in your personal experience, from what you've had working in this industry, what is it that you're seeing schools kind of working with and adopting? Are you seeing that there is a higher level of acceptance for this sort of technology? Is there, has it kind of gone up a little bit more, or do you still kind of see where people are just still kind of hesitant and waiting to jump on?
Yeah, I definitely think we're in it's early part of the adoption curve. And what we're trying to do is get people to check it out, to try it out, and trying to make that as low friction as possible. Um, and I think that's what the whole industry is doing. So, it's not just us. So we're kind of trying to be part of that wave. And again, that's where I think you really got to find the champion or the teacher that really sees the potential. We have a couple other interesting use cases. I know you said kind of K through 12. We have one partner called VetX, who is focused on kind of the graduating seniors, I guess. So they're using VR to help students explore career opportunities or career options. And they're also using it. They're working with some partners for college tours. Um, and so again, if you're a kid somewhere, maybe you can't go visit a bunch of colleges, but it's actually being used also by international students who maybe are interested in coming to the U.S. As a way to kind of visit a college campus. They might want to apply to. So I think that's a really interesting use case. It's kind of perfect for VR. Um,
Absolutely. Like that's one thing that I really like what you said there because again, you get to tour. And now when I was in the classroom, my goal and I introduced a little bit of AR VR within the classroom. Basically, it was like they gave me a Google Cardboard, but then, I was able to get an iPad and then we kind of started working a little bit with Merge Cubes. But for me, I always obviously within the curriculum, still trying to find a way to give my students an experience that they may not otherwise have due to, of course, socioeconomics, things of that sort. And the look on their eyes when they were able to see something like the Statue of Liberty just pop up from the floor and they're able to walk around it and just see it. Even for me, I've never been to New York. Someday I hope to be there, but even I was like, wow, I'm still getting that experience, kind of seeing it and bringing either history to life, because at the time I was doing social studies, I was doing science also, but bringing science to life. But you're absolutely right. For those graduating seniors that are getting ready to move into their next phase in their learning, the fact that you're able to visit an international college or just even a college university here within the
yeah,
US and walk around and maybe even see a digital twin or interact within a digital twin of that campus, that's something that is very useful to make some more informed decisions of where you want to go.
yeah. We have another partner. When we talk about digital twins, they're using VR for immersive language practice. So, I mean, obviously, you could log into VR and be together, but what they're doing is creating environments. It's like a store where you would go in and practice your Spanish skills by actually buying stuff, or you go to a fast food restaurant. So you're doing immersive learning in environments where different kinds of conversations would happen.
That is great because that's practical. I mean, you're having that conversational, whether it's a conversational Spanish class or vice versa, conversational English, but creating that space. And also, it just kind of brings a little bit of that psychological safety where, students may be a little self conscious, especially, in the classroom, depending on grade levels. We can know that sometimes, kids can be just, a little rough sometimes. But here in this immersive space, you're in an avatar form, you're still making those connections, but you feel a little bit more comfortable in that sense, I think, and a little bit more open and adventurous to try new things. So I absolutely love that. I'm glad that you shared that because that's a
Yeah.
great use case for language learners or in any case. Awesome. All
Yeah,
right.
you
So,
mentioned avatars. We get a lot of questions about avatars, like, oh, it doesn't look like me. But again, I think it's the strength of VR. Um, and this one educational partner that hasn't launched yet is actually asking about, they want non-human avatars as well, but they think there's a lot of value to being able to put on somebody else's skin and interact. But I also think it's amazing how much a person's personality can come through an avatar. And again, just the body language, the voice, the spatial audio, you really get a sense of a person, even though you're talking to an avatar.
yeah, no, I most definitely see that. That's awesome. So right now, as far as Remio is concerned, we talked a little bit about the platform, and I know that you do work with the higher ed space. Can you tell me a little bit about, the experience in higher ed or maybe some of the feedback that you're getting? And the only reason I ask this is because I feel that when we came back from pandemic, I saw that higher ed now was a little bit more open to greater use of technology than they were before. And then what I noticed is that when K-12 space went back to our brick and mortar schools, there was a huge kind of like little pullback back in tech where now we're like in our comfort zone, we're back in the classrooms, and maybe let's just put the tech aside a little bit. So I'm just curious to see, as far as Remio, have you seen greater growth and adoption, coming from pandemic on, with the AR VR, within the AR VR space, I should say?
I wouldn't say it's been. You're asking if it's higher in higher education. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Has it grown in the higher ed space? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, again, it feels like it's actually growing more in the middle school, high school space. So again, but for us, because we're not a specific simulation. Um, the primary use case we've seen is this. Again, this one partner of ours is using it for college tours. Um, I think when you get into higher education, it's much more maybe subject specific. I mean, I know there are people building kind of digital twins at campuses, but that hasn't been our focus yet. Um, but
Okay.
we do,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Well, for me, I'm happy to hear though that you are seeing it in that middle school. So that's great. Like I said, and that was just me through my observation. But of course, I'm only just observing what is around me here, and maybe just hearing from what other friends tell me that is happening in their areas. But I'm glad to see that there's a little bit more acceptance of it, of the tech, because it's there. And thank you for also for sharing, what you have seen have been some of those barriers that may be there for greater acceptance, which obviously we know that it's a lot of accessibility, obviously to the headset. So with Remio, and just to be clear, usage for Remio is strictly through the headsets, correct?
No, so you can access it through a PC and through a web browser, but it's really meant for somebody who, for some reason, can't use a headset. It's not as great of an experience, right? You really want that immersive experience. Um, but again, in a group of 30, 40 people, you may have one or two people who, for whatever reason, can't use the headset, so they can participate, they can talk to people. It's just not as immersive to be sitting in front of a PC versus having the headset.
Yeah, no, and I can definitely see that, because I would love for my students all to be completely immersed. And so that's one of the things too. There's so many platforms that are out there that offer, very similar. You're on a computer, but something where you're fully immersed, like Remio, and you're talking about, being able to access headsets. You're absolutely right. It definitely brings out that little extra, I don't know, just either adventure, that little extra excitement of being fully immersed. So yeah, so I'm definitely excited about that. And we're getting a lot of love here in the comments. Thank you so much, Amanda. Bonnie, also, who's joining us on LinkedIn. Teachers on Fire, Tim Cavey, he puts here, yeah, I love the college tour application. Makes so much sense. So thank you, Tim, and Scott also as well here. Thank you. It's good to see you, Scott. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Well, Tom, as we kind of get ready to wrap up, I just wanted to share, or actually wanted you to share, how can people get a hold of maybe you, or maybe just the website, and maybe if there is a demo that might be available, go ahead and share with our audience where they can go, or where they can visit to maybe start either immersing themselves in this as well, and being able to plant that seed back into maybe their school district. So share some information with us.
It's pretty easy. It's remiovr.com, REMIOVR.com. And we actually have you can sign up for a free account. You can actually set up a private server and check out a lot of the features. There's a public account as well. And we're pretty excited. We're currently in the App Lab section of the Oculus App Store, but we're launching in the main store January 26th this month. And then we're also on the Pico and the Vive Focus. Again, it's very easy to get in, play around with it, try it out. And then, if it's really something that you find resonates with you, we have different kinds of licenses. Some of them are based on usage. If you don't think, and then we also have kind of a per seat license.
Nice. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for really, number one, the sharing your experience. I found that I was like, wow, when I saw your bio and then when you shared, I was like, this is amazing, where you're coming from, where you get to work, and you're immersing yourself in this wave of AR, VR, and just helping to push that and move that forward. So that's great. And so thank you so much for the work that you do, because like I said, I am a huge fan of the AR, VR space. But before we wrap up, I always have this last segment where I love to ask my guests the following three questions, and I kind of changed up one of the questions, a little bit. So for our audience members that are listening, they're always used to the same three questions, but kind of changed it up a little bit just for today. But my first question to you, Tom, is as a superhero, we know that Superman, his weakness, or what would weaken Superman, was kryptonite. So, what would you say right now in the current states of AR, VR in that landscape? What would you say is your current edu kryptonite, or kryptonite, I should
I
say?
feel like he kind of already asked me that question. Again, I really feel like it's the adoption of this new piece of
Okay.
hardware, right? And it's a big deal, especially for school districts to manage the devices, have the infrastructure, and it's just I think we're just on this adoption curve right now, similar
Mhm.
to maybe where laptops were. Um, you know, I think schools are getting more and more comfortable with technology, but this is like another device, so it's definitely a challenge.
Perfect. Good answer. That's great. Good answer. Okay. Now, what is one thing that you are really excited about here in the AR, VR space?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned CES, and there was a lot of interesting announcements coming out of CES. But the one thing that I'm really excited about is Apple launching their headset. I think, again, from a industry perspective, I think when Apple comes in, they're gonna make XR cool, and I think it's going to really be in a major and just inflection point for the entire industry. So it's been a long time coming, but we're starting to hear developers are working with the hardware, and so hopefully we'll see something from Apple this summer.
Excellent. Good question. Would definitely be a great announcement. And once that comes out, like you said, it'll definitely grow, and it'll definitely, make a sound for sure in this education space too as well. So my last question to you, Tom, let's say that this was the Remio VR podcast and you are the host. What would be one question you'd like to ask me if I was your guest?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know you were going to ask me. So you asked me the question already, what I was thinking was, well, how can I get this for my school? Um, you know, and um, and like I said, I think if there's a teacher out there that's interested, you can just go to our website. You can download the app. You can actually set up a little private server and just start customizing it and messing around with it. Um, but yeah, that would be my question as well. How do I get this for myself?
There you go. Yeah, I would love to ask that question too. But yeah, we'll definitely play around with that too. But Tom, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and just really share what Remio VR is doing, but also getting your valuable insight as being, an expert in this field, and your expertise, and the experience that you've had, going through various phases and seeing how AR VR has grown is definitely valuable. So again, thank you so much for all the wonderful things that you shared. And I'm really excited because, again, now that you're saying that there is a little bit more adoption and acceptance in that middle school grades, hopefully that will all trickle down here in this area and just make it possible for as many students to be able to experience this technology, and for teachers also to experience the tech and its benefits, because I see a lot of benefits to this technology. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank all our live guests that were here: Bonnie, Scott, Tim, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us in the chat live today. And for all of you that were watching live or will catch this on the replay, thank you as always from the bottom of my heart for all of your support. Please make sure that you check out our website at myedtech.life and check out this episode and the other 164 amazing episodes with amazing creators, education leaders, practitioners, creators that we've had, and where I promise you, you will learn at least a couple of new things that you can sprinkle onto what you're already doing great. So thank you so much. Please make sure that if you haven't yet, make sure that you like, share, and follow our website. And if you'd like to contribute to our show and our mission of connecting educators and creators one show at a time, please make sure you stop by our merch store where we've got some great designs. Conference season is around the corner, so we've got some comfortable sweaters, caps, loungewear, whatever it is, and it all goes back to the show. So, as always, my friends, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And don't forget, stay techie.